Okay, start back at that place where you were mentioning that you start from the leading edge. That's the way you generally start off.
Yeah, well, I lay a straight edge down the leading edge, okay?
Yep.
And I just tack it to the, it doesn't need an awful lot of hard, just a couple of nails, you know,
Yep.
tack it to the board. But it's got to be straight.
Yep.
And I have a 4-foot straight edge ruler
Yep.
that I use to keep things straight, make sure. And I make sure these, of course, sometimes these things warp or have a warp in them and this sort of thing, and I try and get them as, you know, the ones I use, I eyeball them and make sure that they're as straight as I can get them. But anyway, what I do then is I take the false leading edge, which is made out of 1/8 inch sheet, and I pin it to the straight edge.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Then I take the spar, the bottom spar. Usually I try to build with ribs where the spar will be flush with the bottom edge of the rib.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do. So
In
that you
other
can
words,
stick
so
it.
that it's not tilted
Yep.
one way or the other type of thing.
So you can stick
And,
it right down
yeah.
flat.
And what I do is I lay the bottom spar cap.
Yep.
This is not glued in, it's just laid in.
Okay.
I lay the, and I pin it, I don't pin it down to the board, but I just pin it. I had to steam it to get the little bit of gull in there. And what I do, or what I did with this, up to the gull, is I would take the rib and I would put the leading edge of the rib against the false leading edge, okay?
Yes.
And then I would take a pencil and I'd mark where, basically where the spar comes on here.
Yep.
Which in this situation, this is the 17th rib. There's the mark there, okay?
Okay.
Now, I want the two spar caps to be vertical to each other because I'm going to stuff them full of balsa.
Yeah, parallel to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to put in webbing in between the ribs and in between the spar caps.
Yep.
So this basically is sitting, this is flush with the table, and so is the spar cap. So all I have to do with this, I take where the mark is,
Yep.
and I draw a line.
Yep.
Make sure that this is flush with and this is flush. In other words,
It's not off kilter. Yeah.
it's anchored basically against the straight edge. I've got that. Now I take, this is basically a piece of these that's been cut off the end, so it's exactly the same, you know.
Yes.
And I take that and I lay that on there,
Yep.
and there's the width of my spar cap. Then I take that, lay that in there, draw a line here,
Yes.
and that's how deep that I have to cut.
Cut the notch.
Yeah, cutting my notch, yeah. And I am not always absolutely correct, you know, in the cutting, but it's not that tragic. So anyway, and this also, you'll notice that there's a little bit of an angle here.
Yes.
So I put the spar cap, the width of it will be at the trailing edge of where the spar cap goes,
Yeah.
and I try and get it as close to parallel to this.
Okay.
And the reason being, of course, is when all I need is the bottom cut.
Yeah. That's
When I cut the webbing, I've got a straight edge here and a straight, in other words, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
90 degrees, 90, 90, 90. So I don't have to worry about any angles when I'm putting in,
The webbing.
yeah. Now, that means that the spark cap there'll be a little bit of an edge here, for example, where it'll be under where the top is. I shim that.
Oh,
Just
okay.
a-
I was going to ask
Just
you.
a small balsa shim on top. And
So the leading
and
edge
then
of the.
and then I hit it with the plane and cut it down. You know, it's no big deal at all. Very easy to do.
So where does the shim go specifically?
Where does what?
The shim that you just spoke of. Where do you put it?
Well, it would be sheet balsa. I'd take like 32nd inch, a strip of 32nd inch sheet balsa, and lay it on top of the spark cap.
Oh, okay. I got it.
Okay, it would go on basically like this. If I didn't need it all the way to the back, you know, of the spark cap.
Yeah.
This is a lot thicker, of course.
Yeah, yeah. But I get the idea.
Yeah. You lay that on up to the edge of the spark cap and then just plane it off.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
But it'd be, you know, like your balsa sheet comes in 4 foot, so one sheet of it would go all the way up to here.
Yep.
Or beyond. So it's no big deal. Then what I would do with this is cut it out, and I use the box knife on the line here,
Yeah.
basically. On the line there.
Yep. Okay.
Excuse me. Then I use my piece of spar to make sure that this is right. In other words, it
Yeah, that
isn't
it's
right,
down
so I've got
deep
to
enough and
take a little more off.
yeah, I see. Test fit it.
Yeah. But if you have this done, you shouldn't have to do that, you know.
No, I know,
should-
but we'd have to check it anyway, right?
But you'd have to know for sure how thick this is,
Right.
you know. So, see, that's that little piece that broke off. That
Yeah.
Normally I filled that in and glued it so it didn't break off.
Yeah.
But that way, then you also have the top, and up so far, I cut the top up to where the gull ends here. And I cut the top slot up to rib number 21, which it turns out I had to put a 1/4 inch rib in here because this is going to be where the beginning of the aileron.
Oh, okay.
And I don't want this pulling in or out. In other words, I want this good and firm.
Okay.
Because when you put the covering on here, if you had this there, it would,
It'll yeah, move it.
it'll bend,
Yep.
you know, and you don't want that. So then, after I had all, as I say, I put the rib in by the front, and I made a mistake here. I didn't raise this quite high enough.
Okay.
So I'm going to have to put in a little
I see.
1/8 inch square shim, you know,
Yeah.
on top of that to fill up the,
The false leading edge is a
Yeah.
little bit. Yeah. Okay.
yeah, it's a little bit low.
Okay.
But it's no big deal. When I lay a rib in, I also have a 90 degree, so that when I'm, the root rib is basically, it's got a 5-degree slant to it, okay?
In toward the top is slanted in toward the fuselage.
That's right. In other words,
Because the wing comes up, it's got a bit of dihedral in it.
well, it's got the gull. you
Oh yeah,
see.
yeah. Sorry.
This
yeah.
is flat, but it's got a 5-degree gull.
I get it.
Okay, so basically the base of the wing is tilted 5 degrees, but the rib is still vertical to the plane.
So,
to the gull. In other words,
yeah, okay, I get it. It's perpendicular, in effect, to the.
yeah, in
To
other
the-
words, the gull is like this.
Yeah,
Okay, this is exaggerated.
yeah, yeah.
And you want the rib comes here, and this would be 90 degrees.
Okay. Yep.
But from here, this angle is 5 degrees. This is exaggerated,
Yeah,
obviously,
yeah, yeah.
you know. So 5 degrees. So because the rib on the fuselage is tilted 5 degrees. In other
Yes.
words,
Yeah.
the
It's 95 degrees in terms of what the fuselage sees.
yeah.
Okay.
And of course, this is, you know, anyway. So the gull is,
An obtuse angle.
yeah. But anyway, you want this 90 degrees here, and the ribs would come up to 90 degrees just before the gull, and then they would gradually change.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm
Yes.
trying to say?
Yeah, so that it'll
So
come.
once it got past the gull, this would be 90 degrees again.
Yes, I get it. For the outboard
Yeah.
section.
So as I come over, I just use this, but I use a 90 degree block of wood, and when I put a rib in, I shove this up against it. I can't do it here because
Yeah.
it won't fit, but this thing will fit. This is 90 degrees here on
Yeah.
all angles,
A cube.
so you'll find that, you see,
Yep.
90 degrees,
Yes.
and
And
then
that's how you make sure that they're
Yeah.
all 90.
and this is basically 90 degrees, and that's 90 degrees, and then that's 90 degrees. Now you're past the gull, so
Yeah.
everything goes in 90 degrees to the base.
All right.
And the table is built with a 5 degree tilt on it.
I wondered, like, that's key, right, to getting the gull in. You had to.
It's
know.
very easy. I stick this under the kettle and I bent it
Oh, I
just
see.
with steam, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's only 10 minutes to do it. 5 or
Interesting.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
So there's nothing to it, really.
Okay.
Now, when I get up here, this was the last rib that I had cut the top out of. The rest of the ribs, I hadn't cut the top slot, okay? And the reason being is that you'll notice there is a shim under the trailing edge.
Yeah.
And the reason for the shim is the ribs taper from a full airfoil to a symmetrical.
Oh, okay.
And you've got the symmetrical, obviously the trailing edge is higher off the board than the straight rib,
Right.
okay?
Okay.
So I've allowed for the difference in the
Yeah.
bevel of the rib.
Yep.
And also I've added a little because I want to give a little bit of washout.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now the washout is basically built in.
Built in. Yeah. Built
Yeah.
into the wing.
It's all glued in. So
Ah, great. How did you
Well,
figure out how much?
guess.
Oh, okay.
I had way too much
Yes.
to begin with, and I had to take that thing out and cut it down.
Oh,
You know,
that's-
the shim down. I had to take about 3/16 of an inch off it.
Okay.
So there's not very much washout, really. I think there's probably maybe only, if there's a couple of degrees, that would be about all.
Okay.
But anyway, okay, now, when you shim up the trailing edge, you can't use this because your rib changes. In other words,
Yeah, you've got the symmetrical
you've
one
got,
now. Yeah.
you've got to allow for
Yep.
the trailing edge to come up. So that's why I didn't cut the top slot. When
Oh, because it's kind of coming up this
that's
way, right? Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would be incorrect. In other words, if you cut the top slot, it would probably, and you laid that rib in there, you know, down.
Oh yeah, it'd be,
The top spar would be, or spar cap would probably be back here somewhere.
yep.
So I laid this in, and laid it on top here. And I still want it, if I'm going to put webbing out, I won't have the interior webbing out this far, I don't think.
Okay.
But
But
just
now you've still got a.
in case I did, I want to get the spar at 90 degrees. You see what I mean?
Yes, you've still got
So-
a right angle for the webbing.
Yeah, so I use this butted up against
Yep.
the rear spar and lay that down.
Okay.
And then basically I tape this. And I did the same thing halfway along here because, you know, there's a little bit of warp to the wood.
Okay.
And made sure that it was
Square all the way.
vertical
Yep.
all the way, yeah. And then
Oh.
with a razor saw,
Oh, that's interesting.
just,
Yep.
and this, very easy.
Okay.
Then I took this
So
off.
just.
Take this
so in other
off.
words, you were cutting the front edge of the notch with that.
Well,
with the
I
razor
cut both
saw.
the front and the rear now.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I have to guess as I cut this. I cut this with an X-Acto knife, you know.
Yep.
But I kind of, as I go
Yeah,
along,
you use a little short piece to check
yeah,
it.
to make sure that, and some of them are a little deeper than they should be. You know, you
Yeah.
can't. I'm not perfect. So.
Okay.
And that's how, you know, now the trailing edge is
I noticed you-
64th inch plywood.
Okay.
And
It only runs. I see you've only got it so far to the.
the aileron sits here.
Okay. Yeah. So you don't
That's
need it
at the
there.
beginning of the aileron.
Yep.
So the trailing edge is cut here.
Yes.
And the rest is pinned down. Now the gull comes along and it, of course, it conforms to the table,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
And it's pinned down. What I'm going to do with this, I'll take the Dremel and I'll take 32nd inch piano wire. And what the heck have they done here?
So it looks like, is it a plastic sheath?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Oh, I see. There's several of them in there,
yeah.
and the glue is still sticking them together.
There we go. Oh, not more.
See, Fred, this is why movies are always more
They,
expensive than they're supposed to be.
Yeah, they hate me.
They've got it pretty well secured.
Finally,
Okay.
I got a piece of wire. Now, what I'll do here is lay this. I take the Dremel with the small end on it, you know, the little cutter on the end.
Yeah, yeah.
And I cut down in here. And I'll lay this in about there.
So you'll make just a little notch with the Dremel.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
all the way up.
Yep.
Lay this in. This isn't bent, or at least, you know.
Yeah.
And basically what it does, it adds substance to this.
Lateral.
Now,
You know.
yeah. And what I do then is I hit it with hot stuff or with the CA
Yeah.
and use the
Fixer.
Yeah, and so that kind of build it up around the wire, so you've got a good
Yep.
solid deal.
How deep is that notch you would make there? Just the same depth as the wire?
Oh, well, no,
Just enough to hold it?
Yeah. This one probably the way these ribs come down, I'll do it about here, probably about halfway through.
Okay.
But some of these ribs are a little high, as you notice they protrude over. So, but after I've got this done, when I do lift the wing up, I lift it up before I put the top plywood on.
Okay, hang on.